G'day, friends and fans. Welcome to Writing Corner, and I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the book The Boyhood of Cade, book one of the Empire of Elves. The links are in the description below. Please and thank you. Check it out after the show, and while you're there, consider becoming a patron of the channel today, and also get access to my writing. Now, when it comes to writing fight scenes, you need to make the fight necessary. And of course, how do you do this? Well, in the back of your mind, you're going to think, why are they fighting? This may sound stupid, but you need to build up a fight, particularly it has to be meaningful beats, things that should matter, that matter to the plot, to describe the scene in fast-paced manner. So you have to avoid lengthy sentences and lengthy sequences, unless the characters have no other option, like a dialogue. Try to avoid dialogue. Try to allow the characters to be imagined as much as possible, and give a meaningful purpose to the fight. Now, before you do this, of course, you have to clarify your stakes. That is, not only while you're setting up the fight, what's involved, not the action. Before the action, not before any physical altercation, there's the mind battle. Why are they fighting, and what are they fighting for? Now, you have to make each scene unique. Otherwise, you basically, you go back to the 1950s or comic books where you have wham, bam, pow on 3 pages, and this is the same over. This is where cliches come from, the 1950s, 1960s. And by the 1970s, already you saw a decline in books, a decline in writing. And then came the uptake in the thrillers and police procedures and romances that we see today. Most, however, the fight scenes are unique. Now, this goes for comic books too. Each scene can't be retraced back to a previous action sequence. Now, lengthy prose is a problem in a fight scene because to make it short and punchy, you can't have long dialogue, so stick to shorter sentences. Specific details have to be specific, and basically you have 2 to 3 sentences, bam, 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 bam. And this is also goes for erotica. It goes for whenever there's fighting, and sex scenes are very similar in that they have to be as brief and as specific as possible, where romance is about the prose. Now, one of the problems, particularly with superheroes and magic, is powers. When it comes to powers, you have to have rules, and you have to follow these rules, whether it be hard or soft magic. Most powers these days are soft. That means they avoid as many rules as possible. So whether it's fighting a civilian, Superman doesn't crush them, so there's this know your magic, know your powers, and you have to at least once describe them, but again, try to be short and have magic set up, have magic introduced, have a power consumption test of some sort, where your mage or superhero, with Superman, it was up and away, catching a falling Lois Lane, then later a plane, and so you had all the way up to Superman flying into space to stop comets and missiles and X-ray vision. So set up magic, set up superpowers, set up whatever scenario that explains power limitations or power levels or power differentials. Now, magic needs to be anchored. There needs to be a cost. We saw this with Harry Potter, however, where the rules were thrown out the window because they hid behind the shield of children, and children's egos are very quick and easy to excite in the hands of a skilled manipulator. And those manipulators were parents who were told that this book would get their children reading. They read the book, ditched it, Borders went broke, Warner Brothers made billions off the movies, everybody made money off the theme parks for a while, though they still go, made money off the merch, which is still now on discount, then a video game, but ultimately, ever declining returns. Why? Because it's not as failing as fast as other franchises, but it's failed to be anchored in something. People are anchoring it all on Harry Potter. So the further they get away from Harry Potter, it's like Star Wars. The further they get away from Darth Vader and Luke, it fails. Why? Because they anchored it on the characters. It's Harry Potter and it's the Harry Potter franchise. Everything, it's like Star Wars. Everything is the Luke Skywalker saga. Everything else is superficial, uninteresting, because it's not the anchor. Now, with magic and fight scenes, there are videos out there for fantasy. There's sci-fi as well with mind powers and superhero genres with, well, what you could explain as magical mind powers, although they say genetics or alien powers, but it's all magic, right? Everything's magic. Everything supernatural is magic. Anchor it in some form of cost and power scale. Otherwise, you have a soft magic system, Harry Potter, which will eventually become messier and messier as time goes on, harder and harder to keep under wraps under control, where eventually you go from, now it's explainable in progressive systems, but for some reason, the more logical fantasy is not well received by the emotional and the tactile people prefer your comic books. So there is that. Now, Lord of the Rings is also soft magic, but it was rare magic, and it was anchored in that it was short, to the point, and you never felt like, oh, he could have done this at any time. Some of the Eagles. Well, there was actually in-book explanations for that should have been fleshed out. But when it comes to writing a fight scene, the problem is length. These are like arguments. So an argument has to be short, to the point, and do not linger. When a fight is over, the chapter is over. The longer the fight, the better the sequence has to be to keep the reader engaged. And a really long fight sequence needs action with moments to allow the reader to breathe. And these are written and rewritten many, many times. Now, how do you know your fight is good? Well, one, there's a motivation. Two, the stakes are clear. No, well, actually not to you. You give it to somebody to read, and they can pinpoint the motivations of the characters involved. They can tell you the stakes of the characters involved, and they can tell you the highlights of the fight, and it doesn't leave them feeling as if they are taxed or cheated out of their time. This is the importance of beta reading, which I'll get into in other videos. But when it comes to a fight scene, this is one of the killers of a franchise, particularly with superheroes, with a lot of budding superhero comics out there. It's important. This is why you have seen comic books shrink. This is why you have seen a focus and emphasis on individual still art and a shift to, you look at manga, however, they have entire chapters of fights. They have and again, the visualization of they establish the powers through visualization. They establish the power differentials by the size of the explosion or the amount of times they could hit in a fight, and how much they could get hit and keep getting back up. Those are important, subtle details. And Naruto, you have the training sequence that establishes power levels between them and between the different groups. And these power levels, everybody progresses, but they remain within their power level blocks. So it's not clear, but I think particularly some characters should have leapt and others, but they kept it as a basic progressive system. And progressive fantasy is, in my opinion, should be much is very underappreciated because it gives you a distinct progressive system where you go, yeah, I can understand. It's like he's a boxer for 20 years. He goes through a series of fights and eventually he's undefeatable or undefeated and retires. And that is, your champions series and stuff like that. Those are very good. You have Flash Gordon is established early fight scenes to establish that, with the Eagles. Was it Eagles? I forget the name of the men, sorry. It was there. It's just off with the fairies. But with magic, it does, particularly these days, people just want very simplistic. It's unfortunate. Write what you know. Don't write for the crowd. The crowd is you never know what the crowd likes. Trust me. Like we're living in a media falsehood where the media will tell you something's popular when it's not. Tell you something is phenomenal when it's not. Tell you it made money when it didn't. Oh, it made 8.2 billion. But how much went to the studio and how much went to the oh yes, Warner Brothers say we made 8.2 million. Why are you struggling to get a series off the ground? Why are you doing this? So try not to focus on established franchises. And again, this is where we go back to TV tropes and look for fight scenes, magic scenes, and look for the best. Read the best and know the best. I'm not saying plagiarize the best. I'm saying learn from it and adapt. Some of the best magic scenes involve dice, cards, not just wands or staves. Some are subtle, like Bewitched. Some are one of the most still beloved series. Although Charmed, again, it's a soft magic system. Most popular ones are because they're dumb. That way they can dumb it down for a bigger audience. And that's the problem, isn't it? The bigger the audience, the dumber things have to get. And it robs something of the ability to make a complex, in-depth, engaging story. When all you have is villain shows up, pew, 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 and then they go back to their daily lives, and you have Buffy and Charmed. A lot of them are just 80% of the stories, the daily lives of the characters, nothing to do with the actual plot. Now, for a while, it engaged the audience, but eventually people got tired of the teen drama when they were, especially when they're no longer teens. And then, of course, the differential between the two characters, and eventually you had the egos colliding because the male lead was eclipsing everybody, and eventually his own series. And it's, you're going to have this with your own characters where they eclipse the original characters. You're going to have that problem. You have to manage it. Now, it's easier to manage in a book than in a real TV show where you have real life egos to contend with. But if you ever get that far in your writing, you have to make sure that when you're progressing your characters, this is why, particularly Naruto, when they established the power differential in the training and the testing phase, they never altered it. They just got better, almost automatically over time. So that there's no, oh, this character's better than this character type. Like, you knew who was going to defeat whom, but to still watch because you wanted to know how. And there were a few times they surprised you. And that sometimes it takes multiple reads to study. And of course, if you're on a time crunch, particularly with writers these days, where most writers have a job and sometimes even a second income to deal with. Yeah. And of course, then you've got marketing and so whether you're writing pulp fiction, progressive fantasy, science fiction, or fantasy, science fiction, or superheroes, when it comes to writing a fight scene or a love scene or a sex scene, keep it simple, stupid. And I'm trying to do that. But yet, to keep it unique, sometimes you do have to break the rules. The rules are there to be broken. That's the hard part, when to break the rules. And that's why readers are so important. Thank you. And thank you for watching. Now, speaking of beta readers, you can become one today. We'll get to that soon. Please like, share, and subscribe. Support the channel, buy coffee mugs and other items from our Etsy store. And if you'd like to be a beta reader, just join my Patreon. Not only do you support the channel, you support me and my writing. And you get access to my writing. Now, I have a second, and if you want to know about rules, I have a second channel for my Patreon. Sorry, a second Patreon for my RPG material, which gives you the rules. And of course, please check out my links in the description below. My books are found in the link tree. And of course, you can make a direct donation today. Please and thank you.